there, Miss Lauren Oakes.
It's not plural. It's single. Oak.
I'm aware now, but initially I did think that the first time.
Everybody does.
You got to cut me some slack.
Everybody does. Everybody asks if there's an S at the end.
I like to now just do it to annoy you.
Okay.
All right. Are you ready?
I'm always ready.
Today, I'm talking to Madison, and we're going to kind of walk through a year. Her 20s are a year old, and we look back on the wild and crazy ride that is your first year with 20s.
Yeah, it's always a crazy ride, no matter what with twins. That first year.
How much do you remember of your first year?
God, I remember like when they're first born and like the NICU stay, and it was just chaos. But then it was like a big blur after,
Yeah.
like once they got home and things just got rolling, it was a huge blur.
I think that's the way it is for everybody, unless you have reasons to remember certain events, right? So, like, if you had a kid, like I could remember things like when Anna decided to like stop breathing, right? So, like, you could remember like monumental things that happen, but you get caught in the Groundhog Day, if you will, of change a baby, feed a baby, sleep, change a baby, feed a baby, sleep.
Yep. That's really it. That's all it is. It's survival of the fittest. And it really just, I always say it feels like Groundhog's Day, that movie. It's just the same
Yes.
little different things in between. And it's just, yeah, like you said, just crazy.
Now, when you first came home, how long were your girlies in the NICU?
20 days,
20 days. So, and they both came home at the same time?
the same day.
I couldn't remember. So, after they came home, did you have to go to like a preemie clinic or any kind of follow up because of them being early?
Yes, they, the day they were discharged, they handed me a long list of doctors and they said, here, call all these doctors in the next day and make all these appointments in the next 2 weeks. And it was like 5 or 6 different doctors. It was an eye doctor, a respiratory doctor, just the regular pediatrician, and then the NICU doctors that I had to follow up with. And there was something else. And then they had like people coming to the house to check, like they had like a nurse that visited once,
That's nice.
just I was like, they called me, they're like, oh, the nurse is coming. I'm like, what? Huh? So she came and it was like, oh, everything looks great. But yeah, and I was like, I'm supposed to get them to all these appointments in 2 weeks. Oh, okay. And went home and was just like, I don't know where to start.
Oh my gosh. How many weeks and days were they?
They were exactly 32 weeks.
32. So that's it. I'm 2 weeks ahead of you. So now that's the cutoff. The cutoff is 34, right? So you got all that paperwork because I made it to that 34th day. Literally, I didn't get anything.
Oh yeah, no, I had a slew of things.
I wish I did. I think maybe things would have been better. Like, it's so interesting that there's this 34-week cutoff and we still needed all the same services that everybody did.
I think well, the hospital I was in, the majority of the babies in the NICU were ending up going to all these I remember seeing people in the doctor's office and like, I was like, oh, here we are both at the special eye doctor. And oh, look at us at the pediatrician and the neonatal doctor and this one and that one.
Yeah.
So,
Do you remember their first birthday?
I remember the party that we had here. We had a party at the house here and, it was just chaos, but the actual day of their first birthday, I don't think I do. I
I
don't
don't
know.
think I remember their birthday either, but we had like a big blowout jam.
Party here. We had like my in-laws drove up from North Carolina. It was like, although did I tell you about we had the ugliest birthday cake?
No.
I went to Stop and Shop and I was like, let me get the cake here. I was food shopping and I went over to the bakery and I was like, okay, I want to order a birthday cake for my twins. It's their first birthday. And I was like, we don't really have a theme. It's just first birthday. And so the girl behind the counter was like, we're going to do balloons, just balloons. I was like, oh, great. Balloons. Great. So I go pick up the cake the day of the party and it was the ugliest cake on earth. It was like brown and yellow balloons with black stripe. And I was like, this is the ugliest cake on earth. It had no like red and blue and green and had no like primary. It was brown, different shades of brown and yellow. And I was like, and I was just so exhausted. And at that point I was like, let me just take the cake. and I picked them up like little cute little individual cakes to do like smash with. And that's what we sang happy birthday with. And I did not let anybody see the ugly cake. I just cut it up and served it. I didn't even take a picture of it. It was so ugly.
Oh, I'm so sad. I was going to ask if there was any proof of this cake.
Cell phones with cameras and stuff. And I was like, I came home just like, oh my God, this is the ugliest cake on earth. Who did this? And
That's
I
hysterical.
couldn't verbalize it when I picked it up. I was just like in shock.
And they're not even full babies. Like you could say like full colors maybe because that's what they had.
February, I was like, this is the ugliest cake on earth. And then I was like bringing my mother-in-law over. I was like, look at this ugly cake. I can't serve this to people. I can't bring it out to the table. It was just depressing. It looked like mud. It wasn't even chocolate. It was white buttercream. It was horrible. I said, who made this decision?
That Stop and Shop for you. Should have went to Costco.
Yeah, I should have. So
There you go. All right, you got to meet Madison. Her adventure is quite a handful. So buckle up, and here we go. Here's Madison. Madison, thank you so much for joining me today on our tiny little podcast with 6 listeners. I appreciate you coming to play with me.
Thanks for having me, and hello to the 6 listeners.
Yes, they're nice. They're okay. One's my mom. It's fine. It's probably not, actually. I don't know if your family listens to your podcast. Nobody in my family gives a crap about almost anything I do, but hey, that's the way that it goes. But I give very much a crap about what you've been through and the journey of this extraordinary year, banner year, legendary year. You have been through a few life changes, shall we just call them? Just minimal. So of course you're a
long
mama.
roller coaster.
Is that what we're calling it? That you can't get off of?
Yes.
You have to just close your eyes and go.
Hold
That's
on.
it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So give us a little back end story of how we got here and where you were this time last year.
Mm-hmm. Well, this day last year, I was starting hospital bed rest at only 27 weeks with my identical twin girls. They apparently wanted to join us very early. I was on hospital bed rest for just about 10 days, trying to hold them in as long as I could when they decided to join us. Una and Marlo had quite the NICU journey. Marlo had NEC that was discovered just one day in. So she spent the first 3 weeks of their life at a different NICU than her sister Una and myself. And her NEC was resolved. She was able, after about 3 weeks, to rejoin her sister. So we had them in the same NICU then, which was great. And Una spent about 45 days in the NICU and Marlo about 65.
Wow, that's really not bad. I know that that's probably for those out there that are like, oh my gosh, that's many days, but I think that that's pretty miraculous.
It was. We were very lucky. Everybody said that they were strong little girls and did awesome for being born at only 28 weeks.
Oh my gosh. Madison, could you walk us through what NEC is? I know that we actually have a whole separate podcast on NEC, but for those that haven't listened to that, could you just describe to us how this happens, when it happens? How did you know it was happening? What's the deal with NEC or NEC, right?
Yeah.
As a lot of people I know call it.
Yeah. So I'm by no means a specialist, but in our case, we were told that she had developed a hole in her bowels. So, which is obviously not ideal. Things are leaking out that aren't supposed to be leaking out. It's my understanding that it doesn't usually develop right away like that. Mm-hmm. So we're pretty lucky that they did catch it. They did a procedure where they pretty much put a drain going into her belly. It went in one side and the other side. She had that in, sort of draining what had leaked out of the bowel for probably about 10 days. And then they were able to start slowly pulling it out. And then finally, after several weeks, they were able to completely remove it. So that was definitely the most nerve-wracking time. You're just sort of waiting to see if it works.
Yeah.
Waiting to see, once you start giving them breast milk or formula, what happens. And so we are really lucky that, she just took to the operation really well and that it was resolved in one procedure, because I know a lot of families have to go through a lot of procedures. And that would be so hard.
Yeah, well, it's hard. I always say everybody's hard is their hard. Right. So like whether I know it's horrible to say, but if you're going through 4 operations or 1, that moment is still traumatizing and it's really dramatic and horrible and nobody wants to go through anything. I mean, so many of us have this, thought of I'm going to make it to 38 weeks and deliver our babies and everything is going to be good, which of course, as you know, it does happen plenty, but then there are families that don't pick the golden ticket and do have a little bit more of a roller coaster to go on. So when you were in the NICU, I am assuming that, like me, that they kept telling you that breast milk is deemed necessary for a premature baby, right? They kept pounding me about that. And that's when you began your exclusive pumping journey, which I really want to kind of get into today because there's so much about breastfeeding out there. And we have some articles already about exclusive pumping because so many of us do it. But we rarely get to talk to people that are like, let this be our focus. And honestly, Madison, I feel like the NICU is where the exclusive pumping journey often begins. So when did you start pumping? Did you use the hospital pump? What was your intro to breastfeeding? And were you directed on what to do from the NICU, or were you just kind of going at it on what you knew yourself?
Yeah, so I want to start by saying I was not going to breastfeed at all. I had made the decision beforehand that I didn't feel like, taking care of twins, that it was something I was going to want to tackle. And I kind of knew going in that I needed to be firm on that if that was my decision. But then, the 27 weeks water breaking happened and a nice NICU doctor came and talked to me about all of the different things that we were going to experience in the NICU and just how important breast milk was. And I decided at that moment that that was the one thing I was going to be able to do for my daughters to help them. So I put my worries aside and decided that I was going to figure it out.
Let me stop you there for a second. So I want to know specifically what the doctor said that triggered you to change your mind. Like what was it that was like, okay, because of course they say it's important, right? And we could take that there's so many things that are important. How did you say, okay, this one is the critical factor and the one that I'm going to really pay attention to?
Yeah, good question. I remember him listing, we want to give them your breast milk first. If you don't want to give them your breast milk, donor breast milk. And then our third option is formula. And so that was why I had decided that it was important for me to do it.
Okay. So you're like, better me. If anybody's going to do it, better be me. Did he ever express to you like the benefits of the actual like composition of the breast milk, or was that just enough that was like, I don't want anybody else's breast milk?
Yeah, that was enough for me. I didn't ask for detail. I just, I feel like I wanted to do it, but I was scared because I didn't know anything about it. I don't really know people who have had children recently to ask them questions. So I was just concerned that it was going to be more than I was able to handle with the amount of support I had. Okay. But once I started in the hospital, I started right away. A nurse shows you how to use the pump. You're coming out of a C-section. It's all a blur. So you're just sort of, okay, yeah, I'm supposed to do this every 3 hours. I'll listen to what you say. And it started working right away. And, I had a really good supply, they were saying. I left the hospital a little earlier than I probably should have with a C-section because of the fact that our daughter was in a separate hospital. I felt like I really needed to go see her. And so I left a little early. And it was the night that we came home, I was calling the lactation support hotline pretty much as if it was like a suicide crisis hotline.
Good.
I was extremely engorged, which I didn't know at the time why I was in so much pain. It felt like I was having a heart attack. Maybe I am having a heart attack. I don't know. The pump that they had given me to use at home, it just wasn't getting any milk out. And so they called me back. They said, come to the NICU tomorrow. A lactation consultant is going to meet you, which I had already worked with a few lactation consultants, I should say too. I probably should have sought out more support before leaving the hospital. But I met with that lactation consultant and she helped me figure it out. She helped me rent a hospital grade pump, which is really what I needed because of the fact that I had so much supply, since our bodies wildly know that they need to make double for having twins, which is crazy to me. And it started to go a lot better then. After I worked out some of those initial things, you know, learning that I was allergic to lanolin cream because I apparently am allergic to wool. And those ingredients are the same thing. So things like that you just have to learn along the way, which makes it challenging. And just exclusive pumping is just, it's hard. You know, sometimes you're able to pump in the NICU at bedside, which is nice. The other NICU that Marlo was at, you can't pump at the bedside as easily. So sometimes you're just going into a room and pulling a curtain and sitting next to the machine, which is hard because you're spending time doing that rather than visiting with your child. But I, you know, pumped as much as I could. I would recommend for somebody who is in those shoes, especially if you have babies in separate NICUs, just spend the money and get a portable pump that you can use when you are in the car going from NICU to NICU. That is one of those things that, looking back, I think would have made my life a little bit easier.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because now you could literally be wearing a pump and drive. So, and for the record, for those of you that are out there, we're not saying that you need to go spend $87 billion on one of the super sophisticated hands-free pumps, but there's a lot of pumps out there that do make accessories that make it hands-free. So I know that Baby Buddha makes one, Medela makes one. So there's a lot of companies out there that are making wearable pumps, and you should always check to see if your insurance covers, you know, any of those. But another tip that I want to give anybody that is going to be an exclusive pumper is it's really important to read the fine print of your health insurance, because some health insurances offer a pump per pregnancy and some offer a pump per live birth. And so if your insurance company offers you the pump per live birth, obviously we're going to get two here. So really call your insurance company and keep digging. And so if you're going to take that exclusive pumping route, you want to have as much equipment as possible, and choice is really a big deal here. Now, Madison, when you started pumping, did anybody talk to you about the importance of like flange size, or they were just like, here you go, here's some 24s, good luck, gave you a salute and walked out of the room?
Yeah, flange size was another one of those things that I was kind of learning as I went. I had a little advice from the lactation consultants on that, figuring out initially what the right flange size was. But then I learned along the way that the flange size you need can change as you continue exclusively pumping. That was something I sort of needed to learn as I went. Kind of a painful lesson to learn, because anybody who's been using the wrong flange size, it's not the most pleasant experience. So I encourage anybody who's out there experiencing this right now to talk to someone. If you can't figure it out, it's, you know, not the most self-explanatory thing. So if you have lactation support, ask them, because it's not supposed to be painful. It's not supposed to be torture, even if it feels that way sometimes. In the middle of the night when you're waking up to pump for the millionth time that day.
Yeah, that's the number one golden rule of breastfeeding, whether it's pumping or to the tap. But breastfeeding should never hurt. And if it does, that's a sign that something's wrong, either, you know, with your position, the structure of the baby's mouth, or the flange of your pump, which is people often use the wrong size. I think, like, as a lactation consultant, that's the number one issue when they're like, this pump isn't working. And I'm like, okay, let's go through this. Calm down, right? Relax. Bring your pump in when I'm in office or when I'm at their house. I get to see everything, but it really is important. And if you aren't sure, we do have, I have office hours available through Twiniversity that are, you know, pay as you go. So you can pay $1, it's fine. So if anybody out there is like, I don't have local support or I can't afford local support, I will personally make sure that you are okay, because it is so important, because you're going to jack your nipples up. Like, oof, you could really do some damage. Man, people like, oh, what's the big deal? No, man, it's a big deal. Nipples are kind of important, especially on a daily basis when they're touching clothing and such. It's no fun. So when you finally got the right flange and you finally got into the groove of pumping, When did you decide that this is the track that you were going to stay on instead of trying to get them to the tap as often as possible?
Yeah, so I decided to stick with exclusive pumping even once the girls came home. Being born so premature, they had to learn in the NICU how to eat from a bottle. And that felt like enough for me to teach them that and have them master that. I didn't want to teach them how to take to the breast when they had already sort of mastered the other art. And also, it would have been a challenge because of the fact that one of our daughters came home 20 days earlier than the other. So I would have had no practice with feeding them both at the same time. I needed a lot of support, from my husband to feed them at first. They were taking 8 bottles a day for a very long time. So just, all of those logistical issues is why we stuck with exclusive pumping. But I admittedly wasn't able to make it too far into them coming home before I decided that I needed to stop pumping. I think I made it maybe a month and a half in, and it was just, when you do the math of feeding 2 babies 8 times a day and then pumping, which at that point I was, I think, only getting maybe 5 pumps in a day. And trying to do the sleeping and eating thing just at least once a day, maybe for yourself. You just have to, decide that for yourself and for your family and children, you have to stop. So
Absolutely.
I applaud anyone who's able to do it for longer than that. I know that there are women out there who do it, and you guys are superheroes.
Yeah. No, there's people who go the first year exclusive pumping with their eyes closed, and they just decide that this is what they're going to do. And the wearable pumps definitely make it a lot easier for families. But I'm curious to know, when you decided, okay, yeah, that's it. Like, my boobs are done. We're closing the shop up. What kind of support did you get from the pediatricians and the specialists and everybody? Did they give you any pushback, or were they pretty respectful?
Everybody was pretty respectful. I think everyone understood that I had done the best I could and couldn't go any further. So they helped me figure out, okay, how can we transition them to formula in a safe way that's going to not, agitate their system, because they were so tiny still at the time.
Yeah. It's really tough. And when you made that transition, did they give you any guidance on making the formula, right? Because there's the big debate. Do you put the powder in first or the water in first, right? When you're using powdered, or did they tell you that you just need to use ready to feed for, the first couple weeks or months?
So we were fortifying my breast milk before that. So we had been adding formula to it to make it higher calorie so that they could gain more weight. So we had been using formula from the beginning for that reason. Then when we transitioned to full formula, we were told water in first, add the formula. We were on a formula that's specifically for preemies for a while, until our daughter Una had a pretty serious health event. And at that time, we switched to Nutramigen to see if that one is known to sort of, it's already partially broken down, so it's supposed to be easier for them to digest.
Yeah.
And so we switched that about a month in, and that made a world of difference.
Yeah. That's what we had too, actually. So it's interesting. And did she stop breathing in the house? What was the event that occurred?
Yeah. So it was about, I think it was a day or two after Mother's Day. They were napping in the morning. I heard a noise on the monitor, which preemies make tons of noises all the time. But this one sounded different to me. And so I went in to check on them, and I could tell right away that she was struggling to breathe. She had bubbles coming from her nose and her mouth. And I knew at that moment that I needed to call 911. So I got to my phone, called 911, was getting ready to start CPR, and they instructed me to start CPR. And thankfully, the first responders got here within minutes, and they were able to finish reviving her. She spent some time in the hospital while they were trying to figure out what happened. But pretty much they're just calling it a BRUI, a brief resolved unexplained event. which I know has a whole definition, but sort of in my head, we couldn't quite figure out what happened, so we're calling it a bruit. Their best guess is that she had reflux and sort of aspirated on it, which is it's not a normal thing that kids do, right? And I should say she was sleeping in the safe sleep position in her crib on her back alone. It was just one of those things that happened. It hasn't happened since, thankfully, and she survived it, which is nothing short of a miracle. So.
No, it really it's pretty unbelievable, and I don't think I've met anybody else that has had that. So ours happened on Easter Sunday, interestingly. So, and it's the same exact thing that they were making noises. And I remember putting my hand on the doorknob and literally saying to my entire family that was eating Easter dinner in my house. And I said, I don't even know why I'm going in here. Like I announced it, like, this is ridiculous. How many times am I going to go in before I can sit down and eat my lamb or whatever the heck we made? And sure enough, same situation as you. We were, thank goodness it was Easter Sunday, because we had a family member that was a first responder. And so that was just luck right there. But that was the trigger that put us on Nutramigen as well. Did your insurance company end up covering the cost of Nutramigen, or did you end up having to pay out of pocket for that?
We, for a little bit, were paying out of pocket, which Nutramigen is incredibly expensive.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we were able to get WIC support, which has been
good,
a huge help. I don't know how we would pay for it otherwise. So, especially when you're going through, a can a day with twins. So, yeah, I would say, seek out any support you can get if you do need to be on Nutramigen. If you have maybe a nutritionist that you're talking to, ask them if there's any resources available.
Yeah, it's one of those tricky things. I think at the time, almost 20 years ago, it was about $9 a day then. So I have God only knows what it's up to now. I don't even want to know. Don't even tell me, Madison. I'm going to freak out. But interestingly, there are resources. And another way that you could get it covered if you need any kind of special formula is that most states have specific health insurance programs for children of that state. And of course, some states have a cap on how much the parents could make. But weirdly, here in New York City, it's really high. And so pretty much anybody, like despite the Astras and the Rockefellers, could go on it. And it comes out anywhere from $5 a month to, I think the max you pay is $60 a month. But then they would cover all those special formulas and all that stuff. So even if your own health insurance doesn't cover something, often, and I know this is a different topic for a different day, but having a qualifying event, which is the birth of your children, could kind of trigger something in the life cycle of health insurance. So if you're out there listening and you're like, hey, this is, I'm not sure, always look into it. Even if you don't use it, it's just good to know what your state offers, because we all freaking know we pay enough in taxes. So seriously, if the state is going to be like, let's look out for the kids, let them look out for the kids. It's okay. So I'm really glad that you got the support that you needed and you were able to do that, because it's astronomical. And like already you have enough expenses with just diapers and wipes and, a little Sophie giraffes. Like there's so many things. You are a book person. So that's where all your money was going, as I could see behind you, which is fantastic. But like it's and even if you could save the money for college, as dumb as that sounds, it adds up fast. So yeah, you definitely want to look in to see what services are available in your particular state or your particular country, really, to see what is available to you. So now in hindsight, looking back to the person who was like, I'm never going to breastfeed, right? And then knowing the experience that you went through, are you glad that you did this, or do you feel that it was all kind of for nothing?
As hard as it was, which it was incredibly hard, there were a lot of times that I wanted to quit, sitting up, in the middle of the night, sitting there pumping, thinking about my daughters at the NICU. But I'm so glad I did. It really felt like something that I could do, something tangible that I could do for them, even when they were sitting in the NICU at night, and I was here at my house. So I'm incredibly happy I did.
Yeah. I mean, any amount counts, even if it was the first day, the colostrum, that's it. So for anybody that's out there, if you're of the school of thought that is like, I don't want to breastfeed, which unusually I actually work with families that don't want to breastfeed, and I feel like they just pay me to get permission. But my big thing is to say, just give it a day. Just give it one day. Just breastfeed for one day and see how it goes. Because a lot of times, if you had a family member that maybe had a bad breastfeeding experience, you're going to say, oh, that's going to happen to me. But every baby is different. Every body is different. Every set of twinnies is different. Every boob is different. And every nipple is different. So really just give yourself a moment. And in all sincerity, especially for NICU babies, the benefits of breast milk are limitless. It's unbelievable of what our body can make. And then let's not even talk about the cost savings. But even with that, there's still babies that have issues with reflux and stuff. So it's not like a bulletproof feeding situation for any baby or babies, but it's definitely cost effective, but not always easier, right? Because we all learned that, yeah, definitely formula could be so much easier. So now that the babies are hitting their year old, right? So here we are they still using formula, or when it was time and you started introducing solids and stuff like that, how did that go with knowing that, okay, we're in formula? Were you worried that you would have another event? How have you been dealing with the emotional end of dealing with a traumatic no breathing event at home?
Yeah, so the first few weeks after the event were obviously the hardest. A lot of not sleeping. We did end up investing in owlet monitors, which for anybody who has gone through an event like this, we found it incredibly helpful. It gave us a little bit of peace of mind to be able to sleep again. I can see how maybe they could go the other way and make people feel a little more paranoid if there are some false alarms. But for us, it gave us a lot of reassurance that we did need.
Good.
There were a lot of months where I didn't let them nap out of my sight. It took a lot to get to a place where I felt comfortable with them, going into it was at the time in our bedroom. They were sleeping with us still.
Okay.
Wasn't until they were about, maybe 8 months old, that we actually moved them into their nursery and made that big step. So it's been just sort of baby steps to getting more comfortable doing things and trusting their bodies to do what we need them to do. Starting solids has been a whole nother journey that has really brought up a lot of feelings. Starting solids, any parent knows there's a lot of sort of gagging and things that go on, which is terrifying for somebody who has, seen their child stop breathing. So that is definitely still a work in progress.
Yes.
The girls are getting all of their nutrition still from bottles, and we're still very much starting on, mashed bananas and avocado and things like that. We've not moved into, pieces of food. So that's something we are working with specialists on, because it is a challenge.
Good.
Which I'm sure a lot of other preemie parents go through too.
And the thing is you have adjusted age, gestational age, and then there's so many things. And with the neck, you have to worry about bowels. I mean, there's definitely, your soup has a lot more ingredients in it than a typical parent. But I'm curious to know, when you were having the issues, did anybody ask you how you were? And were you ever offered any, emotional support or therapy, or to speak to a social worker? Was that even on the table for you?
Sure. So I know my husband and I spoke to a psychologist when our daughter first had her surgery. They asked us if we wanted support then, and we said at the moment that we were okay. We really just wanted to focus on what was going on with our daughter. We couldn't even really think at that point, like, when would we go to therapy or do art therapy as they suggested? So that at the time, we didn't feel like we wanted that. I know at all of the girls' pediatrician appointments and things like that, I filled out surveys many times asking about my mental wellness. I answered them honestly. At times I thought to myself, how could I not be feeling this way with everything we've been through. So you have to sometimes think, okay, is this the normal amount of anxiety and things based on what we've experienced, or is this something elevated? And it's still something, especially the event with Una, that I'm working through. I haven't closed the door on the idea of therapy. I just really want to find somebody who will understand the experiences that we've had in order to be able to help me the best that I can be helped. So,
well, I strongly recommend it. So I will happily tell you that. I think it's important to find a therapist that's a mom, to be honest with you. It doesn't even have to be somebody that specializes in motherhood, but I think just to have that relatable experience that even if they didn't have any trauma, it's definitely relatable. But I mean, it's late in the game, but still early enough. But you could carry that for a decade and not know that it's there. So anybody that's out there that's, tempted to say, should I get professional help? The answer is yes, 100% yes. You should definitely get professional help. And it's interesting because we could say, oh, our friends could help us, our sister could help us. But it's interesting when you have an outsider's perspective looking into your situation on the clarity that you could get. And so when you filled out the stuff, and I know we're going off topic, but really, is there a topic to any Twiniversity podcast? If you've ever listened to one, we go off the rails pretty much at any time. But when you were filling out the forms in the pediatric office and you were like, yes, I'm anxious, yes, I'm anything, did they do anything about it?
No, because it was never, 100%.
Okay.
Yes, I'm feeling anxious. Because I was, handling it pretty well. I used to work in the mental health field, so I have a good grip on, I'm at my tipping point. I need help, and okay, this is manageable. These are the things I need to do to manage my anxiety.
Yeah.
For me, it's making sure, which I know is impossible for twin parents, but trying your best to somehow get some sleep.
Oh yeah.
It's all in hindsight, right? You're looking back and you're like, wow, I was incredibly sleep deprived. How did I mentally handle anything? It's, making sure that you take time to breathe, when both kids are, running around in their diapers, not wanting their clothes back on, you just have to stop for a second and breathe. That's something for me that's incredibly helpful too, when I'm starting to feel overwhelmed. And so things like that.
When you are watching them run around the house and you are going to lose your crap because you are just at the end of your day, do you ever look back and say, holy crap, look how far we've come?
All the time, every day. I look back and think about that. And yeah, sometimes at the wildest times when they are both falling around in separate directions, getting into trouble that they're not supposed to be getting in, that you're like, wow, a year ago, look at where they were, and now look at all of the havoc they're wreaking. It's amazing. There's not a day that goes by that my husband and I don't feel so incredibly thankful to be where we are.
Oh, it really is, and that's never going to go away. Like seriously, I think for anybody who is a NICU family or honestly experience any type of birth trauma, even if it was at term, you're still going to have moments throughout your parenting life that you're going to say like, wow, like, yes, this is actually, they're going to drive me to drink and I'm going to need a liver transplant from cirrhosis. But seriously, like, I'm so appreciative of where we were, and you get to look back. Now, a lot of people don't understand that the NICU could actually be a positive experience, right? Like when you initially find out, like, oh, my kids have to go to the NICU, it's often, I didn't want this. This is horrible. It's all the negatives that go with it. But did you find personally that there were any positives to the NICU? And if so, what were they?
Yeah, definitely were positive. These are our first children. So I had never even changed a diaper before. So the nurses that we worked with at the NICU were amazing. They were the best support system we could have had, and they taught us everything. They helped us give our girls their first bath, learn how to change their diapers, even with all of the wires and tubes and everything else. Helping us have those first moments of holding them together. And so yeah, I definitely saw positive. They really helped us sort of develop into the parents we are. We kind of joked at first that, oh, the girls decided to stay in the NICU to give mom and dad a little more time to become good parents before bringing them home. So it was sort of our learning time those few months. And, you know, we loved the people we met at the NICU. We're actually delivering cupcakes to them tomorrow because we felt like they should get to celebrate the girl's birthday with us. We wish we could, you know, invite all of them to the party. So we're taking the party to them.
I love that. Yeah. For many years as NICU graduates, we went back and we would bring, you know, treats for the nurses and like little stuffed animals. One year I made crocheted hats, but like I was very into making sure that the nurses specifically knew how appreciative that we were for that. And they're just like, oh, it's all in a day's work, blah, blah, blah. For them, it's just like, no big deal. And I'm like, nope, that was a life-changing event. And you have imprinted on me forever as being somebody that I'm going to idolize until my final breath. Like the NICU was such a profound experience. And it's, you know, I'm happy that we're not the only ones that experience that. I really, in general, I feel that NICU nurses, I've said this on multiple podcasts, there should be statues made of these women in every town square, in every town in the world, because it is such a high stress job. You know, it's one thing working in a hospital, you might be working with older people and people could say, oh, they've had their time, but these are brand new babies that didn't even get their start yet. That's their start is in that location. And it's just really, it's really something miraculous. I'm a big fan of supporting NICUs wherever we possibly can. One thing I did want to go back to, you said that you got the Owlette. I want to let everybody out there that for you guys that know, it is not considered a piece of medical equipment as of now. It could be even at the time of publishing this podcast, who knows? However, there are similar devices that will be covered by your health insurance. So if you are not of, you know, the financial status that you could, you know, drop $600 to $800, depending on how much it is that day, just know that if you really speak to your doctor, that there are actual monitors that you tape around the baby's little foot, similar to the Owlette, but it is considered a piece of medical equipment. So it should all be covered. And I know for us, that was just given to us. They didn't ask us anything. Of course, Owlette didn't exist back then, but we were given a monitor that would often misfire and then cause me to have oh, forget it. I definitely took years off my life, definitely 100%. But, and weirdly, she never had another incident. So even though we had all the issues with, you know, misfires, let's say, she never did. And she's 19 now and still driving me crazy and everything is good. But you know, for us, it's interesting because it wasn't her that was making the noises. It was her twin. And so I actually went in the room because of her twin. So it was my son that was making the weird noises. She wasn't making any noises. She was incapable of making any noises. And I'm so thankful that he did. And I still didn't tell them that because I feel like he's weirdly going to hold it over her head. And so these are my twins. And then anytime he wanted her to do something, he would say like, you're alive because of me. Like, I feel like that's the way that it would go in my house. I'm just saying, this is a personal thing. I know my kids well, and I know my son, and he loves to do that. Like if you owe him something, he will make you sign papers that like, you know, he lent you 10 cents. That's just my boy. So yeah, if he ever felt that my daughter's life was only here because of him, he would make her pay for that. So yeah, so we're just skip that story for them. So maybe they'll never listen to this podcast.
We won't let him listen to this.
No. And I said, there's only 6 people. So none of that. I said, nobody in my family.
He's not one of the 6.
No, not at all. Not at all. But Madison, sincerely, I'm so appreciative that you took the time to hang out with us and tell your story. And just, I can't believe it. A year ago, look what's happened in a year. Did you ever think that that would be a year in your life?
My gosh, no. The year of my life that took off years of my life in the best way possible. But
it might have to be the title of this podcast. That might be it, because it's so fascinating of just what a difference a year makes. And for those of you that are out there and you're having a crappy year, just know that It happens. What are you going to do? There's going to be a good year around the corner and many, many more good years to come. So just like Madison, you could go to the NICU and you could celebrate. And remember, guys, she doesn't have to do that. She doesn't have to go back with cupcakes. Like that's not something you have to do. That no NICUs are ever going to expect you to come back with your babies and say thank you, but it is certainly appreciated. So if you are a NICU family, it's something to think about. That's all. So, Madison, what do you think your final takeaway of your year would be? Telling yourself something to the girl that was on bed rest, what would you tell her about the year that was ahead of her?
I would say just, it's a roller coaster, but enjoy the moments where you're at the top of the hill. Try to take mental memory of those because it goes by so fast. And even if it feels sometimes like the roller coaster is never going to end and that it's constant twists and turns, you will get to a point, you will come to their first birthday and you will look back and say, we did it. We did it the best we could do it. And I wouldn't change anything.
Oh, unbelievable. Madison, thank you so much for playing with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yay. And for those
Bye to the 6 listeners.
Right? Yes. Say bye, 6 listeners. And for those 6 of you, if you have questions for us, you could email us at community@twiniversity.com. You could always get information to Madison through us too, if that's what makes you more comfortable. But we're here on every social platform. We're just at Twiniversity, every single place. So you could slide into our DMs and drop us a message. If you're experiencing issues with, birth trauma, if you're experiencing issues with breastfeeding and exclusive pumping, just remember that we have our monthly meeting every second Tuesday of the month at 1:30 Eastern time, that you, along with plenty other people, are just going to come and just let some stuff out because we are not alone in this. We aren't. I know we're 3% of the population, blah, 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 but we are a mighty 3% and we are a strong, close-knit 3%. Nothing like those singletons, and no offense to the singletons that are listening, but odds are you're not, so we could talk trash about you if we want to. But just know that twin parents in general, we really are a tightly knit group and we're always here to support each other. And just know that here at Twiniversity, we're always the first ones to say, how could we help? So thank you so much for listening. Like and subscribe, smash that button, blah, 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 all the crap the kids say. And until next time, guys, see you later, alligators. Thanks for listening.